All right, welcome back to the Basketball Academy. This week, we are joined by a very special guest, Alex Bazzell. He is the co-founder and CEO of Through the Lens. He is one of the best NBA and WNBA trainers in the world. Alex, we're just so grateful to have you today. Welcome to the Basketball Academy.
I appreciate you guys having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so give us a little background first of yourself, and then let's talk about how you got into the training world and then got your business started with Through the Lens and your new ventures
Yeah.
that you're starting.
Yeah. So I grew up around the game, almost probably like a lot of people in the space and industry, and played collegiately. I played overseas for a season in Germany. And that was right after I graduated in 2013 from college. So I came back to St. Louis, which is where I'm from, and I started training kids. And my goal there was just to try to make more money in the off season while I was training myself. So I really began building that, not having a expectation to make it anything more than it was a summer job for me. But it escalated pretty quickly, and I went from 30 kids training all the way to 80 kids the next month. And I was like, uh-oh, well, I'm making a lot more doing this than I am playing. And my vision for playing was I knew I was never going to make incredible money doing it. I just wanted to use it as a vehicle to go visit different cultures. It was the first time being out of the country. So I'm blessed and fortunate to have built a decent resume in St. Louis before I ever got into training. And it from there it just kind of took off. So I parlayed that into working with a few NBA athletes, which we can get into. But more than anything else, it was deciding in 2014. I really loved helping now the next kid in line reach their goals since I had already achieved mine. And that was really as simple as it comes, right? So it was a no-brainer for me, and I really loved every minute of it. And from that, my day to day has really evolved. I used to be on court all day long, all the way up really until COVID. And then COVID hit, and I have a family now and didn't want to travel as much, wanted to focus my time and be around. So I launched a tech company with Carmelo Anthony called Through the Lens. And really the mission is to help athletes understand who are their followers, people watching your content, not even how do you monetize it, but how do you own that data? And for me, this massive creator ecosystem that exists is incredible, but it doesn't serve athletes who are technically businesses. And for me, it was about helping them understand I'm probably going to retire when I'm 35 for them. What do I do afterwards? Most of them are going to, release clothing lines, write a book, do a documentary, start a business. You want access to your fans, especially with Carmelo Anthony having, 8 million collective followers. That's a big thing. And the reality is right now they're reliant on social media and algorithms to reach those fans. So that's really the premise of it all. And then lastly, I am now helping my wife, who is one of the top WNBA players in the world, alongside Brianna Stewart, launch a new 3-on-3 league for the top WNBA players during their offseason. So it's been awesome. I'm very deeply involved in the game still, but it's my day to day is a little bit different.
Yeah, really good. Hey, Alex, I just like to say this. I got to see you in the gym a couple of times, and you're incredible at what you do. Like, you're world class. And I
I
think
appreciate that.
from a skill acquisition standpoint, you do an incredible job, but then you create great relationships with people in your space. I was listening to a pod with you, and you had said, when you got McDermott and Portis to work with you, you said, first, I added value before anything. From a skill
Yeah.
standpoint, where do you think that comes from? Like, what value do you look to add before you do anything else with them?
Well, first is just building trust, right? NBA players specifically, everyone's coming to them wanting something, right? No one's trying to build at that stage or an authentic relationship, most likely with them. So their guards are up. And for me, I'm always about how do I just get my foot in the door, right? If I can get my foot in the door, I can live with the results from there. I can't live if I never get an opportunity. So that was my vision is if I'm in their shoes, what am I thinking? I'm thinking this kid who's 24 years old, who's younger than I am, is going to help me achieve success. How? So that was really as simple as it comes. And then from there, I I really just applied what I used during my playing career, which is work your ass off, be overly prepared, and I just channeled it to being a trainer. There was a lot of times where, especially early, I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew how to build confidence. And for me, when you strip everything away, if you can build confidence and you can build trust with athletes, they are going to get better at an exponential rate. So that's really what my cornerstone was then, and it still is to this day.
That's really good stuff, Alex. And yeah, I was very fortunate to work with you in the 2018 pre-draft, and I felt like there was a lot of trainers who came through. Everyone wants to be a trainer, especially now. How would you tell like up and coming trainers, or young coaches, or even college coaches who are trying to get better at skill development? What tools would you tell them to get into?
Yeah, so right now we're in such a unique time period with player development where I think sometimes we can overteach. And I heard a quote, I believe it was from Gino, saying like players are more skilled now individually, but they're the worst team players that we've ever had.
Mm.
And my wife specifically is probably the least flashy star in the WNBA, but she is great off the ball. She's really good at cutting. She's really good at sealing. She's all the little stuff that actually impacts winning that you do almost every single possession. She does at a high level. So I think sometimes we lose sight of the fact that we need to teach all these combo moves and fadeaways and difficult shots when it comes down to, can you get to your spot on the floor and can you knock down shots consistently? So if I was a trainer, I would just try to keep it extremely, extremely simple and build that foundation. And then from there, you can add little things instead of trying to make the icing on the cake the batter, right? So that is, I always just try to keep it simple. And honestly, it was learning from Kobe of how he did player development. I sat there and watched, I'm sure you guys saw the picture of Giannis and him in the gym. I watched that full workout of 2 hours. Giannis spent an hour just working on his left hand from 4 feet, right? So it's like sometimes we overcomplicate things where the best in the world are just masters at the simplicity of the game. So that would probably be my number one advice is how can you get results with players? It's just starting there.
Yeah, that's so well said. And I think to build off that, we've said this quote on here 1,000 times and we say it a lot, but it's, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. And I think you just hit on it perfectly. For you and your style as well, do you find that, once you know the clarity of somebody's role, you can help them with consistency of play? Meaning, if you're working with someone who just attacks and operates out of the corner, are you working majority from that area?
Yeah, it depends, right? I think it depends on when are you working with them. During the season, you're not going to throw hardly anything new at them. You want them to be great in their roles. But that being said, I do believe in keeping it fresh because, Doug McDermott, I'll use Doug, who was my first client. All he did was catch and shoot corner threes, right? So for me to bring him in and continue to hammer that home, I'm really capping out his development. So there is this balance and struggle between what should players be working on and then what should you implement that's new. Because again, Doug just needs to build his confidence. And if he has confidence, he can put the ball in the dribble. Even if he does it 1 or 2 times a game, that's still an added skill for him that's probably going to lead to success in the areas that he's getting the ball more in. So it's such an extremely weird balance. And like you said, it's very dependent on who the player is. Trae Young, I can do a lot with Trae. Now, what's funny is this offseason was probably our most simplistic offseason for his game plan, but you want him to continue to develop and work on things to where he's going to fail. He's going to try stuff out. He's going to learn, here's what makes me great. And I'm going to kind of hammer that home. And whereas maybe older players, they want to stick to routine and you have them for 35 minutes and you got to maximize that. So it's just very dependent on the individual.
That's well said.
Yeah, and going into that, like a lot of coaches just try to overcomplicate it. Why don't you think more? You see in the college game, like why aren't players getting more skill development than they should? Because their coaches don't know how to teach it necessarily, or
no, I think coaches are taking it a lot more seriously now because they know most of these players have individual coaches in the off season. And that's just part of players feeling confident. They just grow up differently than they did when we were growing up and playing. We didn't have skill development. We just kind of went out and tried stuff out. but I do think it's more system oriented. There's a lot less spacing in college basketball than the pros, and that probably plays a factor into why our players not more skilled at that level. And then secondly, I think there is an element of overcoaching because there's a lot of pressure on these college coaches to perform or they lose jobs and their families have to move. And so like sometimes we take away the human element sometimes of why are these players playing so tight? It's usually because of the coaching staff being under such immense pressure for these results from these 18 to 22-year-old kids.
Yeah, really good point. And to pivot a little bit, I'd love to get into the through the lens stuff as much as you want to talk about. What I love about it is you found something you love to do, you built an independent brand around it, and then you've made it creative work and you stay ahead of the curve. You mind talking a little bit about what you've done in that endeavor?
Yeah. So really when we first started it, we wanted to be more of like a master class for sports of teaching from the best minds in the world that I was fortunate enough to be in the room with. And how do we get that to the masses? And then from there was learning and speaking with the athletes that were involved, like Trae and Carmelo and Candace Parker. What do you all want to see? What do you all need? And I think as coaches, that's all we do anyways, right? We have to be listeners just as much as teachers. So I've just applied that people skill to business, and that's really it, right? So with Through the Lens, it's instead of these athletes having to use YouTube, which is the only spot to put long form content, they have a spot with us and they get visibility into it. Because let's face it, Trae Young doesn't need to make 50K or 100K off YouTube, right? He needs something bigger that can build a long-term business. So that's the goal of it. Now from there, my goal has always been when I was training every day and when I had my academy in St. Louis going, what did I need? So now we're taking that same platform and how are we applying that to trainers, or even how are we applying that to people who operate podcasts? Because ultimately it's the same thing. It's visibility. Same way you guys run the newsletter, it's visibility into marketing, into a distribution outlet, right? You want direct access to your customers and to the people that are listening to you, day in and day out.
Yeah, and Alex, as Dustin said earlier, you're really a master teacher, master of what you do. And I always say like you can get lucky once in a room, but I've always admired how you always came prepared. And is there anything that you've learned throughout your years to just continue like to have like daily habits of being more prepared, and like how do you keep yourself in the room?
Yeah, good question. What's funny is, recently I used a lot more feel than I ever did before, right? Like I had to be overly prepared because I probably wasn't as confident that I was teaching what I needed to be teaching. So I would try to teach a lot more than we probably should have. But to your point, I think what it does is it builds confidence from the players and also builds trust that you put in the same amount of work that they are probably about to put in. So I think that is it's the optics of it for first and foremost. And then really from there, it's just maintaining that connection, and understanding that sometimes you may have to throw your game plan completely out the window, and sometimes it may go perfectly as planned. So what's interesting is for me as an individual, it's funny because I listen to a lot of podcasts. I listen to a lot of people who have incredible routines, and some people prefer yoga or meditation or reading or making your bed in the morning. I'm so opposite of that sometimes. Like sometimes I'm in a great routine and sometimes I can't be because I have a 17-month-old who's going to wake up at 4 and has to be fed and out the door at 7. And so I think it's understanding that not everyone's blueprint is going to work for you. You just got to figure out, how do I maximize those hours and make sure they're efficient, right? What's funny is I'll bring it back to Kobe, who was like the ultimate militant when it came to waking up early. And I tested him on it one time where I'm like, there's no way this guy's waking up at 4 a.m. He just retired a year ago, right? So I texted him because I was up for a flight, not because I was also waking up early. And he texted me back right away. And I was like, that's so interesting that he maintained that, and that's what he needed to function at a high level and stay disciplined. But I did ask him, like, do you ever get tired and like need to take a nap? He's like, yeah, if I'm tired, I'm just going to take a nap. He's like, it's not like I'm not going to overthink it. Sometimes I'll take a nap and sometimes I won't need it. So it's funny. It's like you see the hierarchy of waking up at 4 and it's like, yeah, dude, if you're tired, lay down. So it's interesting. Everyone's different.
And with that, I mean, getting to spend time around Kobe as much as you did, and I'm sure you've been asked this a ton, but any other things that I think success leaves blueprints, it leaves clues. Are there any clues that he left and things that you have latched onto that you still keep?
The simplicity being everything. That's something that I've applied deeply on the court. That's probably number one. Then number two is what he did off the court and how he interacted with people. He was incredible with names, and I'm horrible with names. And there's a story of I was training Gigi and AZ Fudd now, who was at UConn, and then my wife, Napheesa. We were at the NBPA here in New York. And this was 2 months or a month before they passed away. And I brought up a guy, you guys know DJ Sackman. DJ's a big trainer on the East Coast and around the world. But I brought DJ. He's like, listen, I have a buddy of mine named Lou, and he's the biggest Kobe fan in the world. And I want to bring him up, and he'll be cool. And I usually never entertain this, especially with people like that, because I'm sure they get it all the time. So I was like, all right, dude, well, I'm putting my neck on the line, so you better be cool. So anyways, I bring Lou. He, introduced, this is Lou, this is DJ, blah, blah, blah. We go through about 2 hours worth of the workout, and then Lou has to leave. And Lou's walking out, and he goes, Lou, are you not going to say goodbye? And Kobe across the gym, he's like, oh my, I'm sorry. Like, it's nice to meet you. I just didn't want to bother you. So to this day, he's like, dude, Kobe remembered my name right after and this was, keep in mind, there was 10 people in the gym, AZ's parents, us, there was a lot going on. And it was a brief meeting, but it was one time he said his name and remembered it. And then go back like even further, Luke Cooper, who's another trainer, he had been around a couple times. And this is how great his memory was. And this is probably what made him as great a competitor as he was, is he found the balance of being a great human, but also being ultra competitive. And that's something I value a ton of. You don't have to be a jerk all the time to be successful, right? Like, you can be a great person off the court. But anyways, we're scrimmaging the girls. The girls are in 7th grade at this time. Okay. So we're like mid-20s, we play still. And he's like, listen, I don't want you guys to take it easy. I want you to press them. I want you to do all these things. And we're like, all right, dude, like, these girls are 7th grade. We'll do our best. So anyways, Luke's out there with me, and Luke misses a 3. And then there's like a timeout and a break. And Luke's like 0 for 2. And he's like, Jesus, Luke, are you going to make a shot? He's like, I mean, you're 7th grade girls out here. You can't get to the rim. And he's like, dude, I'm just getting it going. I'm a volume shooter. If anyone would know this, it'd be you, I thought. So he's like, so of course he's like, the only volume I know is 5. Get back on the court, referencing his rings. So anyways, 2 weeks later, Luke comes back, and he'd only been around like once. Right when he walks in the room, Kobe goes, "What's up, volume? How are you?" So it's just like stuff like that where he remembers what you said, even though it was a quick witty comeback and it seemed like he brushed it off. But he's just a unique individual, and someone I've never seen so present when he's having conversations with people.
For sure. I mean, that just speaks to the ultra competitor in him, right? That's amazing, man.
Yeah.
And one of the things we ask everybody on the pod, and we'd love to ask you the same, is, there's a really cool sports psychologist named Michael Gervais who works with the Seattle Seahawks, and he likes to work on the mental side of the game. But one question we ask every guest is, when are you at your best? So the phrase is, I'm at my best when I am blank. How would you finish that sentence? When are you operating at a 10?
Yeah. I think when I'm at my best, my mind is clear. It's not filled with a lot of things that I need to be doing. So, like, we talked a little bit about routine. Like, when I am at my best, I'm able to meditate 10 minutes in the morning, and as crazy as it just completely clears it out for me. So I think that's more than anything else, is I get caught up at times trying to accomplish so much in a day, where then it leads you not really accomplishing anything at the end of the day. You're like, well, shit, I got through like a fourth of everything I wanted to, instead of focusing on 1 or 2 things. So yeah, when I'm at my best, my mind is completely clear.
You're saying 4 a.m. with your daughter, that's when you're at your best? That's when you're flowing?
That's not when I'm at my best, but I'm forced to be at my best. So
good answer. Yeah. Hey, let's pivot towards your new venture of the league that you're starting with Napheesa and Brianna Stewart.
Yeah, we so the league is called Unrivaled, and most people, I'm sure some people know a little bit about the WNBA who listen to the podcast, but the WNBA plays from April to September, non-traditional basketball season. Most of these players have traditionally gone overseas to maximize earnings, most of which have actually paid more than the W. Okay, so keep that in mind. Now, the opportunity was, how do we keep our players home? How do we compensate them fairly? And also, how do we give them ownership and upside into this league? So there's a lot of new leagues that are launching. Like probably the most well-known one right now is Tiger and Rory's new golf league called TGL. It's weird. It's pickleball, it's lacrosse. Like there's all kinds of new leagues starting. And it was really an opportunity in time, knowing that the way the CBAs work for the women's game and the men's game is not the same. Like Trae, Kyrie, these guys can't play and get paid in the offseason to play. The women, however, can. So with that opening, it was like, well, why don't we just start our own league so you can stay home, you can be around family, you can rest your bodies. Like most people don't know, these women play year round. Brianna Stewart tore her Achilles in Russia. Okay, so how bad is that for the WNBA? So what we're trying to do is we want to fix these issues first and foremost, and from there, the premise of it is it's a innovative 3-on-3 league. Okay, so 75% of the games will be played in Miami in a custom built soundstage. So think of the way the bubble was, but with some fans, right? So it's LED back wall, 1,000 fans, but the 3-on-3 game is not half court. It's a shortened 65-foot court. A lot of people hear that and like, wow, that's going to be tiring. We actually spoke to a couple of players and like, actually half court 3-on-3 is exhausting because you're never stopping. It's nonstop, short sprints, closeouts, get it out, bring it in, right? So this allows for actual game flow, having up and down, being able to walk the ball up the court, traditional rules, just a shortened court. And the vision was, how do we just make the game better? So at its core, it was really built around this product idea. The women's game is clogged up. It's played inside the 3-point line. It's more physical. Like you can almost equate it to the NBA of the 80s and 90s, right? The players are skilled, but there's not a lot of spacing. So we just want to pull 2 players off the court on each side and open the game up a little bit and create a little bit more fan enjoyment for especially the younger demographic of fan. So the idea is we're going to have 6 franchises. We're going to have 30 players. We are focused on trying to go get the top women in the world. And obviously then you start talking about filtering some of these college stars who may become eligible in year 1. So kickoff of the league will be in 2025 in January. So around January to mid-March, ends right before March Madness begins. So it's a good time slot for us. And then the women still get their off season and breaks to develop their game and stay home and do all the stuff that they actually want to do.
That's really cool. Yeah, immediately my brain went to like more touches, more space to attack, more guard play. Like what a really good idea. Less post entries.
Less post entries, yeah. So the style of play will be a little bit different. Like a back to the basket traditional big probably wouldn't thrive as well in this league. Whereas, Jewel Lloyd or Arike Gumbawale are going to be even better than they are in this style. So it'll be fun. And I think the women are really excited too, because like when you talk about sports and the business of sports, think about Steph Curry. Steph Curry joined Golden State and it was like a $500 million valuation, maybe a little bit less. And now it's sitting at what, $5-6 billion. Right. It's not a secret of why. It's because they started winning and he was the nucleus of that winning. Now, people can look at it and say, well, Steph's making $60 million a year on a court now. He's okay. Okay, but you're not understanding how much money $6 billion is that he was directly involved in. So that being said, is the women leading the charge on having ownership and upside into a league and teams taking off is going to be extremely innovative. And I think it's going to also put a little bit of pressure on the rest of these leagues as they think about new CBAs coming up too.
That's really cool. A common theme I'm thinking, Alex, and I just coming up with this on the top of my head, but like so many things you do are in service of other people. Have you always been heart-centered like that? And where does that come from?
That's a good question. I don't know if there's always an element of that because what goes around comes around. Like I'm a big believer in sometimes you just give and sometimes you won't get anything back. But ultimately it's a relationship thing and trust again, of why would they trust you for this? And you have to serve their best interest. And once you do that, like I'm still young, I'm 33, right? So I'm not worried about maximizing every single dollar I can get right here, right now. It'll take care of itself in the macro. So that's always just been my mindset. Number two is, my dad has run a mortgage business in St. Louis called Integrity Mortgage for 30 plus years. And he's always been a guy to beat every deal. He's like, yeah, let me get you the best deal. What you go find a quote, your best quote, bring it to me and I'll beat it. And I think that's just always been entrenched at me at an early age with how he went about business, and it certainly worked for him. So I had a little unfair advantage early on to learn from an incredible teacher.
That's awesome, man. And let's talk about how underrated St. Louis food is. I'm just kidding. Go ahead, James.
No, Alex, again, appreciate you hopping on and just talking life, business, and hoops. Where can people find you, either to get in touch with Through the Lens or just follow your amazing stuff that you're doing?
Yeah, so my social handles are Alex Bazzell, 2 Z's, 2 L's in that, and then through-the-lens.com, spelled out just the way you may think. So you could find me pretty much anywhere on social or through-the-lens.com. And yeah, I'm excited to see this space evolve. I'm obviously excited for you guys and your newsletter. It's going to continue to grow. And I'm glad I can play a small part into what you guys do long term and seeing this thing flourish. So I appreciate you guys taking the time to have me on.
We appreciate you, man. All the knowledge you drop, how good you are to the game. Honestly, man, you're a conduit in this space, and we really appreciate it.
I appreciate it, guys.
Got one more question. Who do you got winning the basketball tournament?
Good question. This is the first time I've ever been asked this, by the way. Everyone's like, who's winning the championship? So I'm not going to throw out an obvious answer like the Nuggets. I want to go with the Timberwolves. I want to see a team that's up and coming, that's hungry, that's playing really well right now. Ant is taking his game to another level. Cat's been better than ever. So they've been actually really, really fun to watch, and I'm rooting for Minnie. So nice. I'm going to go with that.
Nice, good pick, man. Good pick.
Yeah. Who'd you guys go with though?
Well, it's not biased because Napheesa's in Minnesota, right?
Yeah, no bias towards the ownership group that's also cutting checks to our house. But no, I actually believe in
there's a sponsor behind you.
Yeah. That message was brought to you by Alex Rodriguez and Mark Glory. Who are you guys going with?
Yeah, I got OKC. They put a lot of pressure on the rim with cuts, and I think they're so young and hungry that they'll be in games they don't deserve to be in. And then they have a closer in Shea. He'll take games over.
I like that pick too.
They're just fun to watch, man.
I'm going with my team, the Celtics.
Nice, original, nice, man.
We got to win something.
Yeah, way to go out on a limb.
Yeah, good for you. Way to get vulnerable. That's fun to watch, though. We'll see.
All right, but Alex, again, thank you so much. But looking forward to just seeing both your businesses grow and seeing all your clients thrive this year. Then hope to see you maybe in the pre-draft this summer in LA and catch up.
Absolutely. See you guys in the gym soon.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks,
All
Alex.
right, fellas.
See ya.
See ya.